Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
And we're here with Cody Paternostro, PowerShell extraordinaire. You recently just joined us for PowerShell Wednesday, discord.gg/PDQ. You can join us there every single Wednesday. I think it's at 2 p.m. Eastern. I don't know, it's every single Wednesday though. But you joined us and you showed off a very cool project. And what makes you such an interesting guest to me is not only that your first project was so expansive, but also your use case for PowerShell. A lot of people I see, they're sysadmin, help desk, maybe DevOps, maybe a developer. You are a developer, I guess, but in sort of a different context. And I'll give my explanation of it, my simpleton explanation, and maybe you can clarify a little bit further. But my understanding is that you sort of work for a company who does build outs of video systems. So you can imagine a school, they have hundreds of cameras. You help verify that all the cameras are working, and you have some dev stuff going on there where you're interacting with PowerShell because the provider of cameras has a PowerShell SDK that you can use. Is that kind of fair? You're in the security business.
Yeah, it's totally fair because I guess the best way to put it, there's like integrators in the world, whatever industry, so you can get hit with like a lot of different products and stuff, depending on what the customer's needs, and some companies, if they can support it, then you got different things. So it's like, it was neat for me because I went to school for networking and cybersecurity, but couldn't tell you anything about physical security, access control and things like that. So it was just like, whoa. So then like, it's kind of neat because like, if you ever wanted to take like a pen testing path or anything along those lines, like it's cool to know both, so I don't know if that's kind of like where I'm going with anything, because I really do like automation and stuff. But PowerShell with cameras is definitely a thing.
Yeah. And to give some insight into what your project is that you showed off today, it's basically a program to interact with those cameras, do all kinds of stuff. But the coolest part for me was that you could click like a show camera button. So say you have an environment with hundreds of cameras, you find the one you want, you click on show camera and it will pull up the feed. Not only the feed, but also you can kind of like scrub back in time and look at the recording.
Oh yeah. That was
wild, dude. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was the start of it. That's what made the inspiration right there. Josh's script for cameras. I just seeing that, like being able to pull up a video stream and you launched it from PowerShell. You're like, what is this? You're like, what am I doing right now? Like I have Milestone X Protect loaded from PowerShell, and you're like, this is incredible. So that's where you start asking questions. You're like, what else could I do with this?
And that's Joshua J. His social name is Joshua. I always remember it because I've read it wrong for years. But he is sort of a mentor to you, right? From what I've seen, at least. He sort of paved a way. He put a bunch of effort into that Milestone PS tools or whatever the module is named. He put a ton of effort into it. You sort of took that, ran with it, saw some code snippets, got inspired. I think that eventually you all got to interact more and got to meet each other a little bit. I don't know if that was through Discord or what it was, but I remember when that happened. You remember how that kind of played out?
It was after I finished school and I started working with his module at the internship at the company I'm working at right now. I was having issues, and it was actually because of the endpoint protection. It was causing one of the commands to not work, and that's because it used multi-threading run spaces. But that was like a challenge that I first had to figure out. And that's when I'm like, my boss was like, hey, there's not direct support, but you could reach out to him on GitHub. So that's just kind of where it started. And I just reached out and asked him some questions, and he was super helpful. And he's been great. I've learned so much from him.
Josh Hendricks is such a great person. I can't think of a person who I'd rather ask questions to. He's so kind. He's so knowledgeable as well. Great person. I think
I totally agree.
He was there for your presentation today and actually even gave some good insightful stuff. So it's cool to see in general the practice in PowerShell. When someone creates a great project and others are able to create great things on top of it, that is the ecosystem at work that I love to see. And that's exactly what happened here between you and Josh. Josh created his APK and PowerShell module that you can use to interact with things, and you took it and ran with it. There's something I want to ask you, and it's something I heard about in your presentation today. You used it multiple times and it resonated with me. It was megascript. So what is a megascript?
Oh, a megascript. That is a script full of functions defined in one giant file. Everything and everything is in that one PS1 file, and you just call it all from there.
And you started off that way, but why'd you switch from that? Maintenance.
It's not, and like if you're gonna make something that you don't want to really expand on too much, and it's just a script or anything like that, that's fine. But once you start trying to make like compartmentalize your code to where you can take a piece of it and use it somewhere else, you can't do that with a megascript. You could do it within your megascript, but only what lives in there, essentially.
Yeah. And you started off, I think a megascript, if it's not too mega, it can work for sure. But I think when people are sharing projects on GitHub and making them open source, oftentimes there's sort of a structure we follow to make it easy for contributors. But in this project, this was your first module at all, right? Or did you dabble a little bit here and there?
No, I didn't even know what a module was. I knew it like the modules that I've used, like a couple, and then it was like import Excel. I just never understood, like, other than that, I just, I was installing it using the commandlets, and I was like, wow, I'm like, that is powerful. You cannot beat that. So learning about module making, that was another Josh thing that just happened at a good time. He did a presentation on using Stucco and all its tools.
In my user group, I remember it. I remember seeing it there.
Yeah. That couldn't have been any better timing. You can actually see on that whiteboard back there. That's like you can't see it too well, but
I can see it's next to your door. Yeah.
Yeah. After today, I can actually erase some of the stuff on there.
What were the things?
Oh, it's all for RemotePro.
Nice.
But yeah, so it was like learning how modules work and kind of getting like the fundamentals down of that. I would recommend that to everybody, because even if you're just doing a small script and you just start out like that, it's so much easier. And then you can have your modules work together in parts of other things,
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. And I think that there is, like, creating a module is a different skill set. It's not something you're going to run into unless you're creating a module. So you could be using PowerShell successfully for a long time, getting a ton of stuff done, and not have the first clue on how a module actually works if you wanted to create one yourself. So it's interesting to see you go from megascript to different files have different functions and sort of what you learned along the way. Because I was looking at your project and there's so many functions. Like I think there's like, I don't know, I didn't actually count, but like 40-ish functions. A lot. You got to scroll a little bit.
Oh yeah. That's another thing too. I was like, well, I know I could go overboard with functions in a sense. Like, does that need to be a command? But that's where, when I was doing this, I was like kind of seeing some of the issues that I had working with it. And I was like, all right, if I want a path somewhere, I could have built that all into one function and made it parameters, but is that really user friendly if you don't have too much knowledge? No, and because you'll see like commands and you know how to use those, and then you're like, yeah, and it's nicer to see. But just having the ability to be like, hey, I'm making a command, I'm going to make it this way, and it's either going to help me out or somebody else. And that's where like the help comes into. That's a big piece of it.
Oh yeah, and you had some solid help. There was some good feedback about your help, so kudos to you on that. But I think that having functions is also important for a bunch of reasons. And erring on the side of maybe more functions doesn't always hurt. And I think you saw that firsthand creating a GUI, right? Having the ability to call functions is it's just what you need to write a GUI. It's going to be any kind of sustainable. And I think you mentioned run spaces. Why would you need run spaces when dealing with a PowerShell GUI?
Single thread, STA mode. So what that means is you open a window and it's your terminal's frozen. You can't do anything with it.
Yeah, it's not great.
No, not at all. So you do have to come up with a mechanism to handle other PowerShell instances that can interact with your main one. So that's like your home window, main window. And the cool thing is that I think I've almost made that section to where I could like use it for something else. Like I don't have to like I think I can call those functions, if I'm recalling correctly, and like use them in another project. But that's the challenge with that, is that you gotta clean them up, because then you'll just keep opening run spaces, and that's dangerous.
Cody, I got this vision. I see this future. I see a blog. I see it by you. I see it taking apart all those little lessons that you've learned, because there's a bunch of super helpful functions that could be their own thing. They could be part of a module, but also they could just be a blog post that people can learn from, and they could be kept in a GitHub repository or something. Because I would personally love to steal your code and just borrow your hard work. And I think that it's a great opportunity for you to get that platform going.
Yeah, that's a part of the struggle. I'm like, I've done so much with this, but I haven't shown anyone, or so that's another piece. I could take my own advice, instead of like moving on to the next thing, maybe do something with what I did already.
Hey, there's more juice to squeeze out of it. I can tell you that, because this project will certainly help some people. Your story will certainly help some people, but you'd be surprised how helpful a certain weird function could be for someone. Like, I think you had one that sort of showed a fancy looking material, like dialog box where you could like pass it parameters, something like that is sort of a standalone thing. Who knows what kind of, like, that's such an easy entry point to creating GUIs that actually look good and will make whoever's writing them look like a champion amongst their coworkers. Like, that kind of thing can be so impactful. And I think you have a lot of examples of that within this project.
Oh yeah. I would have to look it up, what the actual name of the GitHub was, but that was another thing too. Learning how to use assemblies and binaries, just to at least get them into your project. But once they're in there, it's almost like that's another module, kind of, in a way. It just came from a different home, But that's a really good thing that you pointed out, is using like show dialog to have like a WPF window, Windows Presentation Framework.
Yeah. I'm just very impressed that you stuck it out, because a lot of times people will give up on projects before it gets to the point where you allowed yours to go. Was this like a work critical project? Why did you see it through to the extent that you have so far?
Well, here's the thing. Like at work, I'm actually kind of working on other things. I just wanted to learn more. So I like treated this like a course, or, that was one of the things, like when I finished school, I just wanted to apply what I learned and to like go to the next level with something. And I've definitely spent a lot more time than I should have on this when I look at things that I've done. And well, here's the thing too. I'm actually going to be a dad soon. So,
dude, congrats! Let's go.
Yeah. May 16th. That's
wow.
Yeah, it's getting close. So I'm trying to get all of my curiosity out, because I couldn't be any more excited, and I want to focus on that. But I already know if there's any part of this RemotePro project that that's the thing. Like, it'll eat away at me until I figure it out. So I'm just like, that's when I get hit with a problem. You're like, I can't just leave it like this. Like,
right?
Like, what do you do?
Yeah, well, that's some of the satisfying stuff. I mean, when it can be fun like that, it can almost be hobby-ish. It can fill some of that time. There are times in our careers where it's not going to be that, but when it is, I say, try and take advantage. Certainly prioritize family first, but I'm very interested in how you feel now that you've sort of gotten to where you are with the project compared to before. Like, what is your confidence level? Because I find that from what I've seen, everyone has to go through this process that you've gone through, where you really tackle a project. You kind of have to put a bit of your brain, dedicate to it so you can work through some of the problems and be persistent and be bought into it and deal with all the hurdles that you're going to run into. Like, how do you feel now that that's done versus the beginning? About the same, or?
I ask myself that question a lot. I never pay attention to it, and I don't like. I kind of do. Like, if I went back and looked at like because I remember when I was first learning this, and I thought it was like the craziest thing, making a commandlet or like a function, just like initially learning PowerShell. So I guess I definitely came a far way. But if I always just think I don't know anything, I feel like I'll learn more. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, did you enjoy the journey? It sounds like it.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like you didn't put like a ton of pressure on yourself. You're just kind of following the curiosity, and you're able to just write code to it.
Yeah, I have had a lot of detours working on it, and I guess that's kind of where I feel like something is a hobby as opposed to like the workplace. You got deadlines to meet at work. You can't spend forever on some things sometimes, depending on whatever project it is. If you do a hobby at home, you can go any way you want.
I'm impressed, dude. Have you done like other things that were impressive? Have you always been an overachiever, or is this something new? Because just being honest, I've seen a lot of great projects, and project of any size that someone is able to turn into a module and get it published on GitHub is a huge win for me. And that's somebody who I'd like to work with and would probably prefer in a job interview. You've just done that and then kind of like turned it up several levels. Is that like new for you, or I'm just confused? Is this the impact of how awesome PowerShell in the community is, and Josh has been like helping you out, or help me understand why you're so smart?
Let's
no pressure by that statement, but you know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously we're all smart at different things, but you're clearly very capable at this type of thing. Is that new?
I try to be resourceful, I guess that's like I had access to the internet when I was like 10 or even younger. So I think it just started from there because, okay, are you ready for this? This is what made me go full computer as a kid. I think the PlayStation 3 was coming out, and this is when I was already like learning computers, like piecing together different spare parts and stuff like that, trying to get it to whatever. Anyways, PlayStation 3 was coming out, and this is when I was starting to learn about like GPUs, graphics cards, and things like that. And I was like, okay, PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360? I was like, which way am I going to go with this? And then I was like looking at, I'm like, okay, I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, this GPU costs a lot less than a whole new system, and it'll work with my computer, and I can have better graphics. That was the turning point. So that's where the young gamer came out. And, at that point, you're just learning. Like, if it was like playing Counter-Strike and stuff, and you're like, oh, how does the map work? This is what I'm saying. I just ask a lot of questions.
I can relate to that because I've had a lot of hobbies in video games, and, learning how to be, like I was the best at any video game ever, but learning how to be better and how to improve and how to, maybe if you're like me, we're the same age. I found YouTube before a lot of other people, and I was able to upskill really fast at a whole bunch of things because they didn't even know what YouTube was. Like, they didn't know you could see that, how to get started and watch a 15-minute video and know what would take like a couple weeks. But is that kind of what you found, like through your hobbies and maybe video games, you've sort of learned how you learn and learned how to find those resources and like actually implement it? Is that kind of where we're at?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. You got to find a good source of information. That's like number one. And you have to realize and identify too, like for you, like with YouTube, right? You're like, okay, now this is something I'm going to put time into because you're looking at the potential and you enjoy doing it. And then you try to find ways to either make things easier or more smooth. And, it's just comes down to what sparks your interest, I guess.
Nice.
PowerShell will always spark my interest. It's so fun, man.
It really is, especially when you get to the point where you can really create these different pieces that do a lot. And it feels, I don't know if it's like woodworking. I've never done that, but it feels like you're really doing something tangible and connecting things and making tools that are actually impactful.
Yeah, and as you go along, you start to connect more dots. So then I like to think of working with PowerShell. It's a good way to like kind of stay in touch with other areas of tech and IT, cybersecurity, because it applies to everything. System administration. I would like to see more cybersecurity use cases or like modules for PowerShell.
Have you seen PowerShell Hunter?
That was this week, right? That was on the podcast,
dude.
Or am I getting?
Yes, it was. Yes. How'd you know?
Okay, no. I was listening to. I always forget that it's Monday, and then it's like my lunch break, and I'm like, oh yeah, and then like my lunch break's over, and I'm like, oh wait, I'm like, oh yeah, I like looking for something to listen, and I just end up listening to it while I'm at work for the rest of the day.
Nice. Did you listen to the Josh episode? Josh Hendricks?
Oh yeah.
Were you already familiar with him at that point? Were you guys already friends?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a while now, or at least like over a year, I think. I'm bad with timelines.
Me too, especially lately. I'm glad to hear you say that. Yes, time it doesn't exist. We have the here and the now. And you know what I want to say right now to everyone who's here with us? Hope you're doing well. And Cody, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. You shed a lot of light on a lot of different things, but I'm not done with you yet. I got more questions.
Okay.
What do I got to say? I got to say, like, hey, check out the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ for PowerShell Wednesdays every single Wednesday. There's a whole bunch of other good stuff there too. I've really enjoyed seeing the community grow. We've been doing PowerShell Wednesdays for a few months now. Wow. Wild to say that, every single Wednesday for a few months. And it's really cool to see the kind of familiar faces. There's new folks coming around. There's a lot of very experienced PowerShell people, some newbies, a lot of first-time speakers, right? How was it? Give it a 1 out of 10. How do you feel now that you're almost done with the podcast? Not quite. And the presentation went well today for your first time. How you feeling now?
I'm already just thinking, because I hit that error, my build error. I'm like, I gotta fix it right now.
Let's talk about that, because as we're going to go live, we see that there's an issue with building your script, right?
Oh yeah,
building the module rather.
Yeah, I was trying to build it. Well, I already had previously. I was working on this one section today that I really wanted to get done to kind of just like put everything together. I won't go into detail. I'm stopping myself, but
I know what that's like though. You're like, following the string.
Oh yeah. And I just went to go build it. And then I have GitHub Actions set up. I was going to publish my module, and I was going to install it, starting out the demo, just to be like, hey, this is how you do that. And I was like, what is that red line? I'm like, oh no. And it had to do with the manifest version and the changelog. One of the pester tests was blown up. Never seen that before.
I haven't either. It was not that important of an error, but Gilbert gave us a little solution to do / like no tests or something like that.
Oh yeah. In hindsight, that was was skip, I think.
Yeah, skip
on your build. Yeah, the parameters would have. Yeah,
it's hard when things are live, but it was really cool. I think there was a lot of feedback in the chat that it was awesome to watch you troubleshoot live, because the truth is PowerShell isn't always pretty. Sometimes you do see red text. Sometimes you type things in wrong. Sometimes there's an extra parentheses, whatever the case may be. Red text happens, and learning how to troubleshoot and push through it is super critical, especially if you're in the beginner phase where you haven't solved that issue before or anything like it. You might kind of give up, but if you can push through like you did, you can get things back on the road. And I think it worked out in the end.
Well, I'm glad it's different when you're doing it,
Oh yeah. I've had things go wrong a handful of times.
I don't know.
No, I think it was great, man. And I think that it is the type of, there's so much work that went into that. There's a lot of different ways you could approach showing that. Like you could just show the show dialogue thing and explore WPF a little bit. You could just show what it was like to use something like Stucco, or to, go from having a megascript to, there's just a lot of different lessons that it sounds like you've learned along the way of creating this. RemotePro is the name, right? RemotePro.dev.
Yep. That's where it ended up. Yeah, I need to get the doc. That was another thing too. I wanted to do more of the website today, and I just went full into developing the whole day. And then I got down to the wire. I did this to myself. I know what I did.
Hey, that's what it's like sometimes, though. Sometimes we like that little, the rush that comes with that. And there's nobody gets hurt at the end of the day, so it's all good.
Oh, yeah. No, there's reality versus expectations.
Exactly. Oh, gosh. I wish it were always perfect, though. That would be sweet. I'm sure somebody out there, I think that by percentages, like somebody out there has been using PowerShell for a bit flawlessly. Somebody. But not me. I make mistakes. I'm a human. But I got a question for you, man. What is one time something went wrong on the job, and what did you learn?
Yeah, so I have this, at the time it was a megascript. I decided to change the module version that I was working on, and for good reason. It gave me some functionality, but the machine that it wasn't running on my machine, it was a separate machine, but that ended up not seeing the light of a couple revisions after that. So troubleshooting that was pretty insane. One of those things to where you could have been avoided. I'm trying to think if I have another example of something bad. Delivering car accidents, those aren't good.
Ooh.
Those happen.
That counts as bad. That counts as bad. That's fair. Next question. With your knowledge now, what's a tip you give your younger self, right? I don't know how much further back you want to give the advice to, but it really does seem like you've learned some kind of like wisdom type stuff, like learning how to learning about yourself. What is one tip you'd give your younger self when starting in IT?
I think that's what I was talking about earlier, because I already did shoot back a bit, like thinking like how I thought when I was younger. It's really just if you hit a wall, get help, find help, but don't move on unless you have some idea of what you were struggling with. You don't need the full inside and out, just as long as you can say I had an issue with that and like point to it and be like, it's part of this at least. But just don't like gloss over things because they sneak back up on you.
Yeah, as you said that the first time, and even right now, like that is something that I definitely did not do, and it stunted me in so many ways. Like I wish I could go back to high school and make sure that I was. It'd be hard to actually pay attention in high school, but like even in college, whenever I went, like that type of thing, I really should have been doing more in more areas in my life. But that comes with confidence, I think, a little bit, at least for me. Like I wasn't confident enough to ask questions. I was so worried about being found out as an idiot at the time, but eventually I kind of took those away. And as you've seen, when you're able to ask questions, you're able to get answers. When you don't ask questions, you don't get answers. And sometimes just the process of asking the question gives you the answer. But so often I would just get caught in my own head. So yeah, that resonated with me a lot. So that's why I was like trying to dig a little bit deeper. Very cool.
Yeah, just to build off what you just said real quick though, I'm trying to quote my professor. What did he say? If you don't feel dumb, you're not learning. And that's another good one right there. Like if you're working on something and you just feel like you're like, what happened? You're just forgetting everything and you're stuck in the mindset. That's a good thing if you feel like that, because you're learning. You're doing things you never did before. You're going to feel like that.
Yeah,
it's a big piece.
I think it's awesome you had that teacher who was so impactful. I think that's
he's great.
Thing. Yeah. I think that more people need that type of thing, because just one phrase here or there, one bit of guidance can offer people so much. I know for me, before I was getting some external help from people who were successful, I was kind of running in circles by myself. as soon as I was able to start getting a little bit of advice, a little bit of guidance, not even much, my life was able to actually go in a direction I was pleased with and make some progress on things. But it can be hard to find those relationships.
Oh, totally. And that's a good piece of just like networking, joining communities. That's PDQ PowerShell scripting Discord. That's a good community right there.
Yep.
I see people asking questions all the time. Just even something just join a Discord channel and say hi.
Yep. Just say hi. Just reach out. Just do something. Push yourself just a little bit. Because I was absolutely in that boat where I was never saying anything anywhere at all. Wasn't commenting on anything. Nothing. I was locked up. My growth rate was very low. But, we live and we learn. All right, Cody. Top 3 modules.
Oh, let's see.
RemotePro, number 1.
Milestone PS tools, just because I've used it a bunch, and that led me to being blown away with Import Excel. I feel like that nothing is wrong with that module. It's amazing. I feel like it's a cop-out though. It's a staple in the sense of like it should just come with PowerShell.
Yeah, it's too good. I get it.
But no, that I do use that a lot because like if you don't have a GUI, your closest thing is going to be a spreadsheet, and then you bring that into PowerShell. That's powerful in its own way. Number 3.
I know what I want to say for you. You give yours and I'll give mine after, if it's not the same.
Well, I have used the PDQ module, PowerShell module for, I haven't used too much of any of the PDQ stuff, but there was a period to where I was trying to, I was using like WSUS at work. I got that set up for updates. We're not a huge office or anything, but why am I like downloaded like a free trial of it, like inventory. And I was like, wait, PowerShell. So I was trying to, no, there was a bunch with that too. Like if I had a system administrator role, I would be using that insane. And I see people talking about it a lot in Discord. So it's kind of like, I'm like kind of living it at the same time, but not. It's cool to see. I'm like, wow. And I totally understand the thing with printers.
Screw printers. Understand. Get them out of here.
I don't get that.
Well, here's my answer for your third module. And I saw you use this to great effect today. That's right. You guessed it. PS Write HTML.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great module.
Oh, totally.
What are you using it for?
I use the out HTML view command, and that I'm using it as a replacement for out grid view. If you're trying to build GUI stuff, you don't really have to go too far because this is just one command. Okay, so you pipe your output to this, and it'll bring it up in a browser tab for you. And there's some different parameters you can set, but you can filter, search, you can export PDFs, CVS, and I believe Excel sheets.
Fancy. I kind of put it in the same boat as Import Excel. Like it's that type of helpful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like that to me, if you could have unlimited commands that just shipped with PowerShell, that should totally be in there.
I think the PowerShell team likes the approach of not taking on more stuff.
Oh yeah.
But that's why we got the distributed modules and all kinds of cool stuff there. But Cody, thank you so much. If you had to give yourself a shout out, where would you tell people to find you on the World Wide Web? I know you're kind of private. LinkedIn. All right. I'll put the LinkedIn link in the show notes. Yeah, I don't really have too much else. I don't really utilize anything too much yet. Just kind of on LinkedIn. And I did make a Blue Sky, but I'm probably not going to use that because I know there's a PowerShell module. So once I start messing around with that, maybe I'll use it more. I don't have anything against Blue Sky. I just haven't gotten around to it. I'm trying to limit the amount of side projects. Right. I totally relate to that. But I think you're Cody P in the PowerShell scripting channel. If anyone is there, we will see you around. I think your
I'm in there
username is Swifty.
Oh yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks for joining us on PowerShell Wednesday as well, and sharing your story. Hopefully someone out there kind of resonates with what you said. And it's been cool to meet you. I know we've talked online for a bit, but it's cool I got to meet you for sure today. We had the PowerShell Wednesday earlier, and now we got to chat for a little bit. We talked even before we started recording. And I'm very curious to see what your career looks like, because I do stand by what I said earlier about how capable you are. Just take a look at this project, people. There's a lot you can learn from glancing by it. But any final words for the people out there, Cody?
Just have fun with developing. Like, don't get upset. But if you do, take a step back. What's this phrase? Touch grass?
Yes.
Or something.
Touch grass.
Yeah, I see that thrown around a lot. So that's definitely important. And I hope next year to go maybe to the PowerShell Summit.
Be awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to, that's a accelerated crash course, so it's
sure
a lot to learn.
Well, thank you for joining us. And
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everybody out there for listening. If you liked what you heard, give us a like, comment, subscribe. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Cody, I already know you have, so ignore me here. And everyone else out there, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time on Monday.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.